The University of Arizona closed out another academic year with some unfinished business hanging over the break, mainly how the university will protect the right to free speech and address concerns raised about the presence of federal immigration agencies on campus. U of A President Bobby Robbins sat down with us to discuss these issues. First, a recap of how we got here.
This is supposed to be a safe space for students.
This debate traces back to March 19th. A now viral video shows when a few students interrupted two Border Patrol agents speaking to a criminal justice club. The agents cut their visit short, and campus police eventually cited 3 students for disrupting the presentation. Several more protests followed, along with accusations that charging the students violated their free speech and demands that the university ban Border Patrol from campus.
What are the plans to bring those?
By late April, the U of A hosted a campus conversation to hear from all sides about how to move forward. Chants from the crowd and impassioned statements
It feels difficult to move forward.
Characterized the event, which ended with a promise from administrators to not lose sight of the issue over summer break.
And so I will promise that by the end of the summer, everyone in leadership on this campus will go through diversity and inclusiveness training.
This week, we sat down with President Bobby Robbins at Old Main to learn more about what those next steps look like. I know there were some folks who wanted to hear directly from you, and in some cases you did speak, but what was the reason for you not being on the stage?
Well, we debated that, and I brought a lot of advisors into the process as we prepared to do this. I was counseled that this probably would not be a good thing to do right now. My initial idea was that I would do a one person just stand up there and take questions. And I think I would have gotten the kind of questions that I got that I didn't answer, except for the one that accused me of colluding with Art, or whatever his name is, the Union Border Patrol guy. So I have never met this man. I find the comments despicable, and I felt, I didn't have much choice. The microphone was shoved in my face, and so I felt I just needed to set the record straight on that. That is not true. I've never met this man. Liar. Because when I stood up and answered, I got shouted down, liar, liar, liar. So I don't think there was anything that I could have said that day that would have helped the situation. And I think we debated whether we even have a panel or how we would go about this. And so after long discussions, we thought this would be the best way, that we would get individuals who were experts, who dealt with these type of issues routinely, to have a conversation about how could we start the healing. When it was mainly, I was told the best thing for me to do is listen. And I've done a lot of listening and a lot of learning, and so if I had it to do over, I think, I'd probably just stand up there myself and try to answer the questions the best I could.
University of Arizona Police initially made the decision to cite the students. Were you at all involved in any of the conversations surrounding that decision?
No.
Okay.
I was informed after there was a warrant for their arrest.
Now that you've had some time to look back, do you agree or disagree, or are you leaving that to the experts?
Well, I'm leaving it to the experts. I think that because, of course, I have my opinion about whether it's a disruption or not, and then what's the proper way to handle it. And my opinion, which I'm a little reticent to give because I'm sort of the final arbiter of a lot of these things, but I think there was a disruption, but the way that I would hope that it happens in the future is exactly how I laid out. De-escalate the situation, try to resolve it, and if not, make the decision to refer the students through the dean of students, which I think that was going on during this process.
So to be clear, you want to reserve your personal opinion of the students' behavior, but did the students violate any sort of code of conduct that day?
Well, that's what's being determined now. You know, obviously there was it went through the legal system, and the district attorney's office looked at the data and said they were going to refer it back to the university, to the dean of students, and that's where it is now.
Some of these students have said that if they're documented, they don't feel safe on this campus. When they see law enforcement, Border Patrol to be specifically on this campus, they don't feel safe. Are their concerns valid? Are they warranted in that
Yeah,
feeling?
I think so, because, you know, think about it. If you're a DACA student or you're undocumented and you're here, you know, just the sight of certainly Border Patrol or ICE, and even regular police officers can trigger emotions and cause fear, and so I think that's absolutely real, without question.
Do you think that enough is being done on the University of Arizona campus to ensure that when those two bodies are on the same property, maybe within eyesight of each other, that they'll be respected?
Well, no, I think that we can do better, and that's what we're trying to think through in a way that will absolutely not break the law, because I'm not going to break the law. But I think there are things that we can do to make sure, because I've been talking to many of my peer AAU presidents and others about how they deal with it on their campuses. And I don't think anybody's got this perfectly figured out.
Robbins says he did get advice from the president of the University of Texas at El Paso, located along the border. She told him the university communicates often with law enforcement in the city about how those agencies can visit campus and minimize any potential trauma it may inflict on DACA students or other marginalized groups. Robbins also explained the purpose of his meeting with Border Patrol days after the March 19th incident. Would you say then you opened a conversation, a dialogue with the Border Patrol here in Tucson?
Well, I just went over and said, hey, look, I'm the president of the university. I need to come back to you, and we need to sit down and start talking about our relationship. So I haven't been back and haven't followed up, but we've got to do that. I mean, this is what I've learned subsequently, particularly from UTEP. This is a constant dialogue that's going on between the university and local authorities and national authorities.
So it wasn't necessarily directly in response to what took place on the 19th?
Yeah, it was directly in response.
Was there an apology or an attempt to say, how do we fix what just took place?
No, I said, look, I want to understand, I understand you were invited, and I get all that, but this has caused a big problem. And if you weren't aware, I'm here to tell you this, that this is a major issue, and we're going to have to sit down and work out a way how we coexist. And obviously, I respect them for, I mean, they're federal law enforcement officers, and I respect the authority of their office. And I actually talked to the two officers who were there, just to kind of, I wasn't interviewing them to get all the facts, because that's the experts. But, you know, they were pretty calm during it all. And I just wanted to find out, not any detail. I didn't ask them any questions about anything, but just to say, you know, we need to work together. I think also, one of the things that I learned is that, you know, their superiors are concerned about their safety as well. Even though they're authoritarian and they have guns, you know, occasionally they could be harmed. So we want the campus to be safe for everyone.
There are people who are on both sides of this issue. Civil rights groups, we have state lawmakers who are saying we expect law and order. Where are you in sort of marshaling who says what and how you make your decisions moving forward? Because alumni, donors, I mean, there are a lot of people who could be considered stakeholders in this conversation.
Yeah, and I've heard from many of them, but I think that I'm trying to always do what's in the best interest of the university with the first and most important guiding principle of making sure the campus is safe.
As the U of A tries to move forward, one option it's weighing is whether to create a system to track all outside guests invited to speak on campus. No easy feat for a public university with dozens of colleges and clubs and tens of thousands of students, faculty, and staff.
There are going to be people who come on the campus that just want to walk around and walk their dog or go for a run or go to the union and buy some yogurt or whatever they want to do. But if you're an invited speaker who's coming in to teach our students or to share knowledge with our community, then I think that's doable. It's just a big job, and it takes constant tracking, and it takes money. And if the price of that for safety and the well-being of our campus, then it's worth it.
When discussing what's next, Robbins says a small team of administrators that include Title IX officer Ron Wilson are tasked with keeping the conversation going. University officials say another campus conversation event is in the works and will likely take place soon after students return in the fall.
I think with dialogue with all parties, sitting down and communicating and being able to work through some of these issues, I think out of mutual respect and having a plan going forward, I'm confident we have the resources and the will to be able to solve these issues. There are always going to be tension and discussions and points of view, but that's what a university is about. And the one thing that I would say is that we have to protect freedom of expression and respect people's viewpoints, how extreme they may be from either side. So that I'm 100% committed to. Safe campus, providing a nurturing environment for our students to learn and be successful so they can go out and realize their hopes and dreams.
Okay, Dr. Robbins, thank you.
Thank you.